All right, we're back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. With us this morning is Beth Joslyn Ross, Executive Director of the Safe Tennessee Project. And we can take your phone calls, 737-7587. Again, grassroots organization, you say, that dedicated to addressing the epidemic of gun-related injuries. And I would imagine, be it John Harris, who I consider someone, a friend of mine that I know that's been on this show before, oftentimes on his own with Tennessee Firearms Association. He and I think other viewers like Greg and others would say, well, you know what, she's up there saying they're nonpartisan and all this, but I think what I'm hearing is she's against guns. And you probably do get that sometimes. And again, how would you answer that?
It's frustrating because there's sort of a reality that no matter how many times you state your position that you support the Second Amendment and that you have no problem with law-abiding legal gun owners having guns, buying guns with the background check and keeping them for for self-defense or for hunting or whatever, no matter how many times you say that we have no problem with that, there will always be people that accuse us of being, anti-gun. And it's frustrating because I feel like these fights about an issue that's not even really relevant to the conversation distract us from what we really do need to be talking about, which is, there are policies that we can discuss and implement that could reduce the number of people that are injured and killed every year by guns. The fighting on both sides and the heated rhetoric, it really prevents people from being able to sit down and have a rational conversation about it. And it's frustrating. And it's frustrating because as those fights and all that, back and forth is happening, people are getting shot, and children in our state are getting shot. I mean, in the last week, there have been 7 children under the age of 18 shot in our state. And that's ridiculous. We can do better.
Let's go to Brian. Hi, Brian. Go ahead, buddy.
Good morning, Vietnam.
It's Nashville, Brian. It's Nashville.
Oh,
what's on your mind, Robin Williams? Go ahead.
It was so hot and pissy out that I couldn't tell that this weather is driving me batty.
Okay, what's on your mind?
Hey, listen, Safe Tennessee organization. That's pretty funny. How do these people name these nonprofit organizations? That's pretty animal farmish, don't you think?
Safe Tennessee. Well, do you have a question? I mean, I don't understand. I mean, Safe Tennessee, they're advocating
gun control group, probably funded by Soros. I mean.
Okay, talk about, Brian's out there. Brian, you're an out there dude. You just are. But what is the funding of your nonprofit? Just if you want to answer to that.
We're a nonprofit, 501c3. All of our funding, we have very little money in the bank. It's all from just private individuals who feel compelled to support the work that we do. As a 501c3, we're not focused on raising money to give to candidates or to give to political action committees. We don't endorse candidates. The money that we use, or the money that we have, is used to do things like buy T-shirts or buttons or print, flyers that we give out to raise awareness about the issue. We're not funded by any large group or anything like that.
Okay, let's go next to Cindy. Hi, Cindy. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Nick.
Good morning, Cindy. Go ahead.
Well, you got to realize, too, a lot of the guns are inherited through generations. I mean, war generation members, everything else. And they're not to be used to jump out of your bed and shoot somebody.
Sure.
So you got to know why people get worried about that. But the other thing is, you know good and well that when you come out and you do got one, you don't go and just blow somebody's head off. You give them a chance to get the heck out. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks for your call. Well, yeah, I mean, if you have the proper training, I mean, if you could, anyway, I'd try to avoid shooting someone.
Well,
but if I need it for self-defense or to hold someone who's coming at me, I mean, that's what I would do.
Sure, but, as Cindy mentioned and as we discussed earlier, there has to be an understanding. And that's the thing, responsible gun owners, They get it, right? They know that they're not going to just pull their gun out and shoot down their hallway, not knowing who's at the end of the hallway. I mean, a responsible gun owner understands that. These sort of knee-jerk, like I hear a sound, I pull my gun out and shoot towards the sound, you know, that's not someone who's received the right type of training. That is somebody who is most likely not received any training, and you know, again, like you said, you just want to verify who you're shooting at, and if it any way possible, you know, you don't want to take a life, even if it's a bad guy. I mean, if you could get them to leave your house without shooting them, I think that might be preferable.
Gotcha. Let's go to Taylor next. Hi, Taylor. Good morning. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Clayton. Go ahead, Clayton. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Clayton. Got the wrong name there.
Oh, that's okay. Yes, I'm a trained security guard. I've done some armed positions and such.
Yeah.
So I kind of have an understanding of where she's coming from, you know, about the issues of safety and proper deciding when to pull the gun and when to shoot and such. I mean, it's always a difficult decision.
Sure.
I do have a question for her, though. What does she qualify as an assault weapon?
Oh, what does she qualify? Oh, okay. Some people have different opinions on what an assault weapon is. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert on assault weapons, and I know there's even some discussion about whether or not that's even the proper term that one would use. But, you know, to me, an assault weapon would be defined as a gun that was designed specifically to fire dozens of bullets at a very high rate of speed in a very short amount of time. You know, when you have a rifle that can fire, you know, say 30 rounds in a matter of, you know, 7 to 10 seconds, you know, that's a different type of gun than a handgun or a deer rifle
Or a deer
shotgun.
rifle or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Reverend Fuzz. Good morning, Reverend. Hi there, sir.
I want to ask you a couple of quick questions. And I appreciate everything you keep doing, educating people. You're in the news media, so maybe you've heard of this. How many incidents, or is there a significant number of incidents across the country where because a person had a gun, they were able to protect themselves? How many of the shootings would have been prevented if there had been a bunch of folk in the room who had guns? Where has that ever happened? That when people say they want a gun for safety, how much do we hear of the fact that because I had a gun, I protected myself from being shot by some criminal, as they call it? And that's one of the reasons people want to have guns. And again, I do kind of agree that I want to ask this other question. How many places where the laws have been changed did it really impact the availability of guns? Does the law, making these laws, will that really help? And then the legislators who make policies, the ones who keep refusing to strengthen gun laws, how many of them, when you look in their closet, are backed or influenced or have something to gain from the National Rifle Association? Those kind of line of questions.
All right. Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your questions. Well, certainly the NRA is a strong advocate for weapons, and they're powerful lobbyists. Powerful lobbyists. And we've seen it locally here where they can get behind a certain candidate and go after another one and make a huge difference in the race. It's happened.
Well, what's interesting is the way that the gun lobby actually works in Tennessee is that they don't necessarily donate, at least the NRA, they don't necessarily donate a lot of money to a candidate, but what they do is say, if you don't vote the way that we want you to vote, then we will fund someone to run against you, which is sort of it's actually a pretty smart way to do things, because that way you're not actually having to spend a lot of money, because you kind of have this implied threat that if you don't do what I want you to do, then we'll fund somebody to run against you. But you know, the case of Deborah Maggart in 2012, I think, is a really good example
that came to
of
mind.
that.
As far as laws and such, I don't know if he was referencing other countries, or if there are specific municipalities maybe around the country that we've seen where they've installed some, which they can do that sometimes, just as in Metro here, sometimes limits placed on whether you can bring guns into parks and things like that. Has it made a
Not
difference?
anymore.
Well, I know, exactly. As those things come up, does it make a difference?
Well, what we know is, at least as it relates to background checks, that looking at different data from the FBI, in some cases in the CDC, is that states where they have passed expanded background checks actually see some pretty significant reductions in some gun violence numbers. 48% fewer law enforcement officers are killed on the job in states that have passed background checks. Actually, police chiefs, the International Association of Police Chiefs, are strong advocates of expanding background checks. It's something that they feel very strongly about. Also, states that have background checks see 46% fewer women shot by their intimate partners. And as we shared earlier, Tennessee is 6th in the nation for women murdered by men, most often with a gun. So that's a significant number for us.
Okay.
And then also, states that have background checks see 48% fewer gun suicides. And in a state like Tennessee, where we have 600 people a year use a gun to kill themselves, those are significant. Those are significant drops, and could really impact a lot of lives. So, those are some ways that we've seen laws affect outcomes.
When it goes the other way, and I was talking about guns in parks, and that big thing when it was passing, allowing them in the state parks and all this, and I predicted, and most people did, and there was a hullabaloo about this bringing. I always said, here's a news flash. They've always been there.
Sure.
Okay, and the fact that those laws passed, I don't know about you, as you've seen, have we seen a ton of shootings in parks lately? And we just haven't. I don't say there's not been a spike compared to the past, meaning that they were always there, and hopefully the folks that were carrying them concealed, whether it was legal or not at the time, were responsible with them. So, the fact is the guns have been there. And believe me, there are guns in bars, and there are guns in restaurants, even if they have a sign saying no guns allowed. They're in there, okay? They're concealed. And we haven't seen a huge spike in shootings or anything along those lines. So I don't know really what all that means. We'll take a break on that. Now, when we come back, more of your phone calls right after this.